Welcome back to Sacred Sundays. I'm Ashley, and thank you for joining me for episode 3. I want to begin today with a question. What if the voice you trust the most isn't actually you? What if the thoughts telling you to play small, stay safe, keep quiet, and not take the risk aren't your intuition at all? Because I think one of the greatest challenges I think we all face this when it comes to changing our lives is learning to recognize who is making the decisions. Is it coming from our true soul, or is it coming from our ego? And this episode was actually inspired by an in person event that I hosted back in May. And we explored our thoughts, our beliefs and behaviors, and all the stories that we tell ourselves every single day. And one question came up: how can we learn to determine where we are living from the true self, or if we're living from the protected personality? Because there's a huge difference. When we become too identified with our protected personality, we slowly begin to build our life around surviving. And when we're just surviving, we're not really growing, we're just getting by. And here's something that I've realized: a life built in survival will never become a life built around ultimate fulfillment, because survival keeps us focused on avoiding pain, where thriving asks us to create with purpose. Survival is staying safe, staying where it's comfortable, where our soulful self, our true self, wants us to expand because we know there's more for us. The true self is always rooted in love, trust, and peace. It doesn't need to prove anything, it doesn't need to control every single outcome. It simply trust. Where the ego is very different. The ego is built around fear. It compares, it blames, it separates, constantly asks, how do I protect myself? Most people imagine the ego as someone who's loud or arrogant, always attention seeking. It's not the only one version. Sometimes the loudest ego is actually the quietest person in the room. It's a version of us who doesn't want to speak up, doesn't want to apply for that job. Ego doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's quietly telling us not to risk anything, tells us that we're not ready, you'll embarrass yourself, or what's the point of even trying? And after hearing those thoughts for long enough, we actually begin believing that is our identity. But they aren't, they're protection. Those thoughts didn't appear from nowhere. They're trying to protect you from a moment that your nervous system never forgot. Maybe you were judged. Maybe you were rejected, embarrassed, made to feel small. The ego remembers the pain and quietly will shape our thoughts, our behaviors, our reactions, and our perception. It'll tell you never to go back there again. So when the next opportunity appears, before you've even consciously decided, fear's already answered that question for you. The ego isn't bad. It's actually something that we need. Without it, we wouldn't be able to recognize danger. We wouldn't have boundaries. We wouldn't have a fight, flight, or freeze response. I don't think the problem is having an ego. I think the problem is when we allow fear to become the CEO of our lives, because fear is always telling us to choose safety over any possibility. And eventually, our comfort zones just become our prisons. Think about all the biggest lessons you've ever learned. They probably didn't come from getting it right first time around. Everything that I've learned has come from making the mistakes, getting it wrong, failing, but trying it again, and trusting the process is redirecting you and realigning. Every setback has given you wisdom. Every challenge is really just strengthening you, giving you more confidence. And every time a fear appears, it's pointing us towards an area of our lives that we haven't experienced freedom yet. Becoming aware of the ego and the traits of the ego is really important, because we're always in these environments where the energy is constantly changing. We're not in control of how other people show up, their emotions, their thoughts, their projections. And let me just give you some examples. Like when we go to a dinner party, and let's say you're at this dinner party and everyone starts gossiping, and it's about someone who might not be there. There's a lot of complaining, just real heavy negative energy. But inside you just feel something isn't right. But there's also another part of you that doesn't want to feel excluded. And then that moment becomes your choice, where your ego wants to belong, your soul wants the integrity. And sometimes protecting your peace looks like saying nothing at all, changing the subject, leaving early. Not every conversation deserves our energy. So, in those moments, we are offered this opportunity to simply choose where we want to come from. What voice are we going to listen to? And sometimes it's not always as simple as that. Our protective personality, it's almost like an automatic response sometimes. It's like, let's imagine you walk into work one day and your boss is in a terrible mood and just in a bad mood. And the ego immediately tells you, I've done something wrong, but there's no evidence. And maybe simply your boss has had a stressful morning, maybe tired, maybe hungry. It may have been something that has happened even before they've arrived, yet the ego immediately makes it about us. And why? Because uncertainty feels unsafe. So in this moment, you're being asked to learn and lean into trust. In moments of uncertainty, the best thing we can do is have complete certainty. Because if we don't, we'll begin overthinking. And then our behaviors look like people pleasing, trying to fix something that may not even exist. Have you ever noticed how you do that? When there's uncertainty, you want to control, and it shows up in neediness and needing to know, get the answer, get the solution to solve the problem. And here's a practice I'd love to leave you with. It's where we observe instead of absorb. And this is where we simply notice people's energy. We don't carry it because not everything belongs to you. Instead, you simply pause, take a breath, and return back into your body, into the present moment. Have you ever noticed that when you are feeling scattered, like your energy is with someone else, and you're overthinking, you're spiraling, you can feel yourself trying to fix, trying to solve the problem? This is where we've leaked our energy. So what we do is we pause, we breathe in and out, we call back our energy, and we tune into the present moment because the truth can only be found in the present moment. No other moment exists. So if there's no evidence that something is wrong, take that as the fact. Your mind will always seek answers, but the greatest strength we can build is finding trust. Don't make someone else's emotions about you, especially when there's no evidence that they exist. Observe, don't absorb. And I experienced something recently that reminded me of this. I was walking through the park when I noticed a man. He was shouting aggressively at strangers. What are you looking at? He was glaring at everyone, trying to get their attention. And he wanted everyone to know that he was the biggest presence there, which was unusual because everyone was there, just families, people walking their dogs, going about their day. And at a first glance, it looked like intimidation, confidence. When I looked deeper, I didn't see confidence at all. I seen so much fear wearing this armor. Because sometimes anger is protection and control is protection. Fear wears so many different masks. And that's not to say that we tolerate harmful behavior, but it does help us understand it. And it did make me think, what has this person experienced to almost want to push everyone away? That was their form of protection. And what was interesting, everyone in the park also used their protective personality. We all naturally stepped back, we didn't engage, we kept our distance, and that's when the ego serves us so beautifully. It protects us, is genuine danger. The goal isn't about eliminating the ego. The goal is knowing when it's protecting you and when it's preventing you from living. So I want to leave today's episode with this question. Where is your ego the loudest? And more importantly, what belief is it hiding underneath? Because underneath every fear is usually a story. Maybe for you, you don't feel like you're enough. You fear rejection more than anything. You fear failure and judgment. You believe that you're not ready. And perhaps that story is the very thing standing in your way between the life that you're meant to create. Fear isn't always something to run from. Sometimes we're being invited into stepping through the doorway into your next level of growth. So this week, just notice where fear speaks. Pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this my soul talking or is it my protections talking? So the more we start asking this question, the more we're going to be able to determine if this is a true self or it's our fearful self. Now, let's move into a short meditation together. Get yourself in a comfortable position and gently close your eyes. Now take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And again, breathing in and hold that breath. And now exhale. And just begin to feel your body gently relax. And just let your breath begin to follow its normal rhythm. Now I want you to bring your awareness inward. Where does your protective personality feel the loudest? Where do you feel the strongest need to protect yourself, defend, prove, to control all these outcomes, or even just to avoid being misunderstood, or rejected and hurt? And don't judge what comes up. I want you to just simply observe what comes up for you. Where do you become more guarded? Maybe it's when you feel you're at risk of failing. Maybe it's around love or being seen, being respected. Just simply witness it. Now I want you to imagine this soft, glowing energy appear in front of you. And I want you to visualize this as your soulful self, your most truest self. The version of you that isn't fearful or wounded. It wasn't shaped by survival. This self is the self that sees the bigger picture. And it understands your journey completely. Everything that you've been through. And as you breathe in, I want you to imagine this light gently merging with you. And you are no longer seeing through the eyes of fear. You are seeing through the eyes of truth. And from this higher perspective, I want you to look at all the places where your ego has been fighting to protect you. And ask yourself now, why do I feel I need to defend myself so deeply in these moments? What am I afraid would happen if I simply let go? And allow the soulful self to answer. Maybe you learned that love could be taken away, or that mistakes meant rejection, or that being vulnerable was unsafe. Maybe that protection has served its purpose, but maybe it has been holding you back. Where does your inner knowing want you to grow and expand? What fears come up when you think about this next level of growth? And this week, I want you to listen to this voice. Just simply pay attention to it. And when the fear arises, I want you to use your discernment to understand if this is truth or if it's simply holding you back. Now take a deep breath in and exhale, and start to bring your awareness back into your body. Thank you for joining me for this episode. If you'd like to experience this work in person, I'll be hosting the next in-person session on the 26th of July. Have a wonderful Sunday, everyone.